This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up anything that you want right here toll free. 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. We've got Skype. Skype on into the show at username LRN.FM. Joining you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian here.
Chris.
And Mark.
Chris Cantwell joining us from ChristopherCantwell.com. We can talk more about that here in a little bit. There's lots of stuff in the news, including an update on the young lady who was arrested for buying water, if I'm recalling correctly, at some sort of a convenience store. I don't know if it was a liquor store or where she was, but she was at some sort of convenience location coming out with water, and some kind of cop, undercover cop, I believe, confronted her.
The ABC police.
Alcoholic Beverage Commission is usually what that stands for in most states.
Something like that, yes.
And sort of like in the situation, remember where the rapper had the Arnold Palmer, the lemonade and iced tea mixed together, and the cop was out in the parking lot there too, just accosting him, demanding that he hand it over for a search. I imagine this was somewhat similar, but apparently in the case with the college girl, the cop at some point jumped up on her car hood or something ridiculous like that.
And the claim is that they pointed a gun at her too.
Right. Because she might have wanted to leave because this crazy man was jumping on her car hood.
I think they were plain clothes, too.
That's what I'm saying. So he was an undercover agent.
There's a group of people that surround her, jump on her car, and point guns at her. And then they're upset that this woman is like, ah!
Right.
For water, well, we gotta have that water pretty strictly controlled.
This is a free country, my friend. I mean, freedom ain't free.
You can't just be walking around with bottles of water. You need to show where those water bottles came from. Do you have a receipt for those? Did you show your identification?
Yeah, this is a perfect example of how giving a badge to somebody can turn them into an insane person.
Well, now, wait a minute. He was just trying to protect this young lady. I mean, she might have been under the age of 21, and we all know that people under the age of 21 cannot drink anything at all. It's the worst possible thing that could happen, and we need to have men with guns out there to teach these kids the hard lessons in life.
Well, there was that petition to ban dihydrogen monoxide, and I do think that this is important to keep in mind, that water kills a lot of people. It's a terribly dangerous substance, and it's
probably
need to be
right under alcohol. I mean, alcohol is very dangerous. Water probably right underneath that. Water may kill more people than alcohol. It actually would be interesting to see, with drownings and all the other water-related deaths.
Right. It's one thing when they're drinking it, but when the kids start snorting it, guys, I mean, it just really goes downhill very fast.
So what's the latest on this case, Mark? Because it's not a funny story what happened to this poor girl.
It's hilarious is what it is, but I mean...
Luckily, she walked away, so it's fun. It's easier to laugh at this than, let's say, the cop had put 3 bullet holes in her chest.
Right, I mean...
For trying to escape. Escaping felon rule, it's okay to shoot, apparently, by their rules. If the cop believes the person is a felon and is just trying to escape, then they can just shoot him in the back.
Back, front, whatever.
No problem.
The state of Virginia will spend $212,500 in taxpayer funds to settle a $40 million lawsuit filed by Elizabeth Daly, the University of Virginia student who spent a night and much of the next day in jail after 7 cunningly plainclothes agents from the Alcohol Beverage Control Division ambushed her for the crime of purchasing bottled water. Attorneys for Daly reached the settlement agreement with lawyers with the Virginia Attorney General late Wednesday. Daly's attorneys filed her complaint in March. The 12 counts include constitutional rights violations, the use of excessive force. The defendants in the case are the state and the 7 agents from the state's ABC agency. The incident happened last June after Daly...
Who are all probably still employed gainfully.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
This is the thing, is that it's the taxpayers of Virginia that are going to pay this, and not these nimrods, these people that thought that it was a good idea to run around and, just yell at or point guns or whatever it is that they did. I mean, how could anybody be expected to take them seriously?
Well, it's pretty sure it's the pointing of the guns that makes people take them seriously, unfortunately.
They're lucky that this lady didn't, concealed carry and shoot them.
Yeah. It's is there a background to this? There's got to be some sort of semblance of attempt to reason here, right? Like, they're not just like, hey, you came out of Price Chopper with a case of water, so here's our guns, right? I mean, do they sell water in the liquor store and she's coming out? Like,
do we know what the location was? Does it go back into the detail in that story at all? And
I
say,
don't
where
remember
was
that,
she?
but it doesn't. Let me read it right here. It's right here.
What was the girl's name again?
Her name is Daly.
Elizabeth, right?
Elizabeth Daly. That sounds right. So it says that her, then 20, and 2 of her friends purchased a sky blue carton of LaCroix sparkling water.
Oh, that sounds fancy. So I bet it looked like one of those. I'm just going to guess. You know, if you've been to the bottled water section, there's always the $5 or like $3 bottles that come in glass bottles just because, you know,
designer
it's not
drugs.
bad enough. Right. It's not bad enough to just throw a bunch of plastic bottles everywhere. We're just going to go ahead and take even more weight and unnecessary packaging because this water is special. And it kind of looks like it could be in an alcoholic bottle.
It's in it's in a can.
Really?
Yeah, LaCroix water comes in a can. And
even more bizarre. Who buys canned water?
Well,
the only place I've ever seen canned water is on an airplane, and that has to do with the pressure differentials of the airline. As I understand it, the airline taking off and coming down.
You think it has anything to do with
storage.
the cookie dough ice cream? No? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
They were at a local supermarket. Now, sometimes supermarkets will have liquor stores attached directly to them, depending on the state and the laws.
Not Virginia, I don't think. I've been to their ABC stores.
The 7 agents sprung aggressively into action, suspecting that the student was carrying a 12-pack of beer.
Uh-huh.
Police admitted that a high-strung agent vaulted onto the hood of Daly's Trailblazer, not the shortest vehicle out there either. She contends that one of them also drew a gun. Daly, along with 2 roommates who were in the car, did what reasonable unarmed people usually do when violently pounced on by 7 people. They tried to get away. They were showing unidentifiable badges after they approached us, but we became frightened as they were not in anything close to a uniform. She wrote in her account, I couldn't put my windows down unless I started my car. When I started my car, they began yelling not to move the car, not to start the car. They began trying to break the windows.
Oh, my God.
My roommates and I were
That's
terrified.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
According to the court records obtained by the Charlottesville paper, Daly grazed 2 agents with her vehicle. At this time, the records state that the unidentified passenger in the front seat...
Look, this is all worth it to put a stop to teenage drinking.
Well, I think that... Let's not forget that this is illegal. They don't
What
have...
they did?
They had no right to search this woman.
That's certainly true.
Well, and of course, if this was a situation where they actually were coming out of the store with a 12-pack of beer, like, that wouldn't actually make the situation any better, right? Like, let's sort of acknowledge that if you walk out of a store with a 12 case of beer and a bunch of guys with guns hop up on the hood of your car and start trying to break your windows,
That's terrifying.
this is pretty bad even then. And then you're like, wait a second, it was sparkling water, and the story just becomes even sicker.
And she's
Crazy.
20. It's not like this is a 12-year-old wandering around with a 12-pack of beer. This is a 20-year-old.
Well, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened to a 12-year-old walking out with a 12-pack of something in their hands. I mean, I don't know if the cops would have responded in the same way to a 12-year-old.
This was a robbery. Is all this was. This was an attempted robbery, and if she would have squished
I don't
them,
know if it's a robbery. I mean, usually if the cops are going to steal alcohol, they're going to steal alcohol. They wouldn't have wanted a 12-pack of water.
Well, maybe they had been
This was
drinking
just
alcohol all night, and they were
thuggery.
dry-mouthed, and then they wanted to steal some
could
water, to sober up, get over into a
these
hangover
aren't
in the morning.
cops. What you're missing here, Ian, is these are not cops. These are people wearing plain clothes.
Yeah.
Who are like, let me see what you got in the bag,
But they
honey.
they
That's
don't
what
care.
thieves do. They
But-
say,
right.
hey, what's in the bag?
I get where you're
None
coming
of your
from.
damn business. You come any closer, I'm going to run you over with my car.
To them, they're always cops, right? Like when they're in the plain clothes, they still have the power of authority coursing through their veins. and
They're
it doesn't-
imbued with the magic of the 10 that hangs on their chest. I understand.
They are actually have it in their heads that they are a higher form of cop, right? They've actually worked their way through the system
out of the
to
uniform,
become
yeah,
this.
detectives.
I'm a plain clothes cop, which means that I was an extra special jerk on the highways for all these years that I've been on the system. That they actually let me wear my regular clothes to work and assault people in supermarket
they've
parking lots.
graduated from being a highwayman to basically someone who uses deception 24 hours a day on the job. I mean, that's That's usually what an undercover officer is doing. They're deceiving people in order to try to get them arrested for things. Which
I
think
imagine
is
their
even more of
marriages are working out wonderfully.
even more of a scummy thing to do. 855-450 free. You take control here on Free Talk Live. This is Free Talk Live. Watch out when you're leaving the store with that canned water. Apparently, some police officers tend to take that real serious. Like, we're talking about the lady who has now received over $200,000 in settlement. Now, of course, we don't know how much that's going to her attorneys, so let's just say $80,000 in settlement. Either way, that is going to help her pay with whatever remains on her college tuition. So
buy a lot of water.
yeah, it'll certainly buy a lot of ice cream and water, which was allegedly what she was leaving the store with on the night in question when a police officer, or more than one, it seemed like one was the real issue, where he jumped up on the hood of the car. Apparently, at least one of them drew firearms and pointed them at her. Very scary situation. Of course, what's actually going to happen to the police in this particular case?
Nada.
They're going to get maybe a memo or a stern talking to at worst, and at best, they'll probably end up getting promotions, because in a lot of cases, when the police behave poorly, we end up seeing that after the internal investigation, they're cleared of wrongdoing and given promotions. In this case,
well, the promotions are a butt covering for the department. I mean, well, these are exemplary officers that have had one incident, and please.
hey, we're going to continue. Your thoughts are certainly welcome here at 855-450 free. She's in college. A lot of college students have issues with the police. The police are targeting young people, and they love to target college students because they know that they can write tickets and they can cash in from mommy and daddy who are going to come and bail their kids out.
But that's not what happened in this circumstance. This is not a woman with problems with the police.
So you were saying this lady, this college girl, 20 years old, she had walked out of the store. She had some ice cream. She had some LaCroix. Apparently, this is a brand of canned water, which I didn't know you could buy that in the stores. So
it has extra aluminum.
Yeah. So what are you saying? She didn't have issues with the police?
Well, let me finish the story, because I think this is very important. Okay, so
coming from where? Source?
This is dailycaller.com.
Thank you.
Daily grazed is the terminology here. 2 agents with her vehicle, and they'll always say that this is a reason to shoot somebody. The car, bumped my clothing as it went by.
Yeah.
I was assaulted. I may now shoot anyone in the vehicle. We've seen things like that in the past.
Sure. They don't even have to be touched by it. They can just say they were afraid for their life.
It's true. Grazed 2 agents with her vehicle. At this time, the record states the unidentified passenger in the front seat of her SUV was yelling, "Go, go, go!" and simultaneously jumping into the back seat. Once the 3 students managed to make it out of the parking lot, they called 911.
Right, because at this point they thought they were being robbed. These were undercover agents.
That's exactly right. This isn't a person with a problem with the police. This is a person who is being robbed by a bunch of crazy people jumping in her car, brandishing weapons.
But the police happen to be the crazy people jumping in her car brandishing weapons.
It's a problem with the police.
Problem.
The average criminal would not have wanted to knock this girl over for a pack of water that she was carrying out of the store. I mean, even the average criminal's probably smart enough to know the difference between a 12-pack of Budweiser and a 12-pack of LaCroix. But
the Bloods and the Crips very rarely go after 20-year-olds with fancy sparkling water.
When they do, they know what they're doing. What these nimrods didn't understand is that a few college students wouldn't know what a bunch of plainclothes individuals with guns were all about. They expected you to just stop. And these kids thought they were being robbed. These people are unqualified to wear a badge. If anybody in the world is qualified to wear a badge, these nimrods, these morons, these mouth-breathing dullards are not them.
No,
they should be kicked off the force and put in garbage detail.
I think they're acting like cops. I think they're doing what cops do, that they assault and harass innocent people, and this is exactly what we're supposed to expect from them.
Look, Mark, this is a problem that college students everywhere have to deal with. It may not be with undercover officers, but police in general, both undercover and overtly uniformed police, pick on college students. I've seen it happen again and again. Let's go to Joel, listening in Raleigh to Talk Radio 850. Hey, Joel.
All righty. I just think this is a problem overall with the police forces in our country for the last 20 years or so. And what bothers me is just not their audacity to usurp individual rights, constitutionally protected rights, but that the military forces are becoming militarized. in their equipment, in their tactics. And again, I retired from the military, and a lot of the things that I saw fighting weapons, armored vehicles that I saw fighting in Iraq are now on the streets of America in the larger municipalities, courtesy of the police force, and that should scare every citizen of this nation.
And I'm not saying that that's not a concern, but it doesn't sound to me like this was like a militarized thing, right? These are their regular weapons, they're handguns. These are just average plainclothes cops pulling guns on college kids. And which part of the Constitution says that you have a constitutionally protected right to buy like expensive sparkling water in a can? It's not. This is exactly like. This is what drives me crazy about some of the discussion of police, like we're supposed to keep them accountable or hold them to the law or something like that. This is exactly what I expect police to do, unfortunately. And I don't. And if we're talking about constitutions, what part of the Constitution says you have a right to carry water?
Oh Lord, okay. My point is simply this: it's just systemic of the problem growing with the police at large.
Yeah,
no, that much is true. The attitude of the police is it's changed over the years. I mean, like the old timers. If you talk to the old timers, for instance, they'll have a lot of them will have kind of a different, more easygoing attitude than some of the younger noobs, the badge heavies coming in. We had a former police trainer actually come on the show with us. He came and met us in real life as well. I think he came to the New Hampshire Liberty Forum a few years back. Anyway, this guy was he was the real deal. I mean, he looked like a police trainer. He had the expertise of a police trainer. And he said that he had to leave the business because he couldn't stand dealing with the recruits these days. He said that in the 2 decades or so that he'd been doing police training, he'd seen a marked decline in the quality of the person that was applying for these roles. And he ultimately said that at his end, when he was leaving the profession, that maybe 10 or 15% of each class that he would teach was, in his mind, the right stuff for policing. That the rest of them were a bunch of thugs and wannabe thugs.
But when was this not the case? I mean, we're talking about something happening in the last 20 or 30 years. I mean, think about alcohol prohibition. I mean, there was absolute lunacy, brutality going on with the police forces. Just look at the Untouchables, right?
There's an argument to say that it's gotten worse though over time. I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't been that the police have never been violent in the past, but certainly there have been. There was in the past the idea of peace officer. That idea is gone now for the most part. It's been replaced with the idea of a law enforcement officer. The difference between the old stories you hear about a police officer picking somebody up who was drunk and taking them home as opposed to taking them to jail. So it's certainly true that over time, I think that Joel is right and that the police have become more callous, less humane, and more dangerous and more militarized. Thank you, Joel, for the call tonight. And that's what happens. They're a monopoly, right? So you don't have the choice to go anywhere else. So if they just keep getting worse, well, you can complain about it. But what else? 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Well, there's always Cop Block. In fact, I was on RT. I'll tell you about it coming up.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.